Raider Nation, welcome back to another edition of Silver and Black. Today, we hope you're doing great today after the draft. This is our first show since the draft. Yes, we didn't have a show last week, so welcome back to all of you. We can't wait to talk to you. And also, you got to do us a big favor. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Look for Silver and Black today. Don't forget to turn on the auto download, subscribe, and rate and review. We appreciate your comments, and those reviews always help us significantly. So thank you. If you're watching us on video, same thing. Subscribe there, okay? Hit that notifications bell, also a thumbs up, and share that puppy out with everybody you like to share your football content with. Scott Gulbransen, Moe Moton back with you, and we are here to talk about the Raiders draft a little bit. We're going to get to a lot of your calls today, too, since we were off the air for a week, but now we're back. We're going to talk all about this. Want to get your reaction, overall positive reaction, I believe, so we'll get to that. My partner in crime here is Mr. Moe Moton. Moe is the senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report, also Raiders columnist at sportsnot.com. You can catch him on X at Moe Moton, Moemoton. I am at LV Gully, and the show is SNB today. Moe, first off the bat, we talk about the draft. And boy, we said going into the draft, the way the process had gone, that again, it felt like, wow, some adults in the room. I know that's an overused term now, as it speaks to the Raiders front office and what's going on there. But having Pete Carroll, having John Spytek, these are guys who've been in successful franchises, have had good careers thus far. One towards the end of his career, and Pete Carroll, and John Spytek, who's just kind of coming into his own as a GM now. So you look at this, and boy, it did have a different feel. We saw lots of different things. We saw trade downs. We saw them choose Ashton Jeanty. Who told you that on January 25th, by the way? I'm sorry. I got to take my victory lap real quick. Real quick. That's it. I'm a humble guy, so I'll get past it right there. And really addressed a lot of the needs. But Moe, when you look at it from a 50,000 foot level now, my friend, how would you describe the way the Raiders executed this draft, the way they presented themselves, and the way that they were perceived?
It started off with I guess you would say, recently the chalky pick. It wasn't the chalky pick when you projected Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders, but it was the consensus for most mock drafters by the time we got to April 24th. So they filled a big need. When I look at the totality of the class, though, it shows that they weren't afraid to take swings. You talked about the trades. They traded down twice on day 2. Raider fans were getting restless after the second trade. When are they going to make a pick? They finally did, but I think it was smart to take more at-bats because it told me that John Spytek felt like this team needed more depth and needed more players at certain positions of need just in case, because we all know the whole draft class isn't going to pan out. Everyone isn't going to hit. So you want to have more picks. And the Raiders had 11 in this draft class. This is a massive draft class. So this told me, one, that they felt like they had to address multiple needs, and they were going to do that, but they weren't going to be beholden to those needs, and they were going to take some swings. We'll talk about more of those rookies later on, but some of these guys I would say are projects. And then when I say projects, people are automatically going to say, oh, that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think when I say a rookie is a project, meaning there's so much growth that's there for that rookie player, whether he's transitioning to another position, Mellott coming out of Montana State, whether he can play multiple positions. JJ Pegues play both sides of the ball. Travis Hunter, not the only two-way player in this draft class that needs to be touted, right? So there are players in this draft class where you can see the upside there is massive if they do hit. Now, again, all of these guys are not going to hit, but it'll be interesting to see what Chip Kelly does with some of these offensive players. Dante Thornton, 6'5", 4'3", running, 4'3", 40-yard dash player. So Chip Kelly, then you have Patrick Graham, and you got Pete Carroll overseeing it. It was to me, for when I looked at it, I like the draft class. Now, when it comes to starters, I think there's obviously one surefire starter, Ashton Jeanty. I think Jack Bech is pro ready, but we'll see how much of a role he has. Right. But there are a lot of guys who I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how they develop at training camp.
Right, and we've talked about it all the time here, right? Which is when you're looking at the NFL draft, to me, they needed to get 3 starters out of this class. Whether or not they can get 3 starters, to your point, remains, I think, a question mark. And if they don't, then fine. Maybe they will submit. A lot of Raider fans and people I hear from here at the show were upset the Raiders didn't go bigger in free agency. And I was not disappointed in that. I thought it was the smart move because you get into the draft, you see what you have, and you have to build from the ground up. We talk about it, Mo, those rookie contracts, right? Getting guys in on rookie contracts, guys that you can develop, and then supplementing that. So see where you're at, and then can you go make a deal, a trade? Can you go sign somebody who's out on the street that could bring you some value? Sure. And a lot of people talking about Jalen Ramsey, all this other stuff. We'll get to that at another time. But I like the draft class too. There were some prizes even during the draft. I texted you, and let's flash up this draft class again so everybody can see it. But again, no surprise at the top of the first round, at least for us. Like you said, most of the consensus folks had this going this way, which was Ashton Jeanty. Now, we had heard right before the draft people were trying to move up to get him. And we also heard, and I think you were right, my friend, that when they talk so much about Ashton Jeanty during the pre-draft process that you thought it might be misdirection. And I think that's true. A lot of times teams do that. But then as we heard from John Spytek after the draft, Mo, he actually had his son. He's like, it was almost reverse psychology, which was interesting. So we'll get to that in a few. Jack Besh, which is one that I texted you about because I was surprised. I knew about him. To be frank, I didn't know a ton about him. I knew his size, obviously the story with his brother in New Orleans and the terrorist attack, all that jazz. I knew that. I was concerned just because I thought if they were going to go second round wide receiver, that they would go speed, right? But Besh has a different type of skill set than Darian Porter, Caleb Rogers. So you look at this first through third round. So they had those 3 third-round picks, which I think was big. They got that one back that they lost in the Geno Smith trade. They had, to me, their biggest needs on offense. We'll see if Besh is the guy who can start. I don't know that he can. He's pro-ready, like you said. But anyway, they get a running back, wide receiver. Then they get a cornerback with some question marks, but still a good player, and 2 offensive linemen. Like, Mo, you look at that and you say to yourself, well, geez, this is what the Raiders were looking for. These are the positions of need, and in those first 3 rounds, whether or not they start, again, we'll see. But they addressed so many of those needs, right, with guys that they believe are going to help them down the road.
When I look at the class, and I think that topic came up, or how many of these guys are actually going to be starters, and I did talk about that, but I tried to pivot it to how many of these guys are going to be steady contributors.
Contributors, yes, yes.
Because there are certain position groups where it doesn't really matter who the starter is. So your defensive line, right? You're going to play 4 or 5 guys in rotation. It doesn't really matter who the starter is. If J.J. Pegues or Tonka Hemingway are on the field for 50% of the snaps and they're contributing, it doesn't matter if they're the starter or the backup. So I want to just pivot the conversation from saying who's a starter, who's a steady contributor. And I start with Ashton Jeanty. I think Jack Besh is pro-ready and will be a contributor as well. Darian Porter I really like. I had Darian Porter in my final mock draft.
Yep.
And I felt like he was definitely a Pete Carroll guy. Size, length, athleticism, checks all the boxes. He's going to have tough competition. I think the Cameron Richardson is someone that a lot of fans are not talking about because he was a last year's class, but he also fits the Pete Carroll mold. Length, a long cornerback with athleticism, 4.34, 40-yard speed. So he's going to have some competition with Eric Stokes and Cameron Richardson. But I do think Darian Porter's upside, I really like it. I get it. Only 1 year as a starter at cornerback, transitioning from wide receiver. But the potential is there if he is able to get that starting job. The other guy I'm really excited about is J.J. Pegues. I know he's a 6th-round pick, but not just because that he can get those rushing touchdowns, but he's an athletic defensive lineman who can play up and down the line just in case the Raiders have some injuries in their rotation. Dante Thornton is the speed wide receiver you wanted, I guess, to raise the draft in the 2nd round. Has a limited route tree, but I think Chip Kelly is creative enough to sprinkle him in to his offense.
And you talk about the opportunity to be a big contributor. I think Thornton's one of those guys, right? He doesn't have to be the number 1 wideout or the 2 or the 3. He can be a guy you bring in certain packages where you get quick separation for him with that speed and his limited route tree, like until he can develop. And that's what I like about this, Mo. You see these guys, and yes, some of them have limitations now, but with development inside a good coaching staff. And you talked about Pegues. Pegues is a specimen, I think. Okay. And this is Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll loves, you go back to DK Metcalf. I know it's a different position, but I'm just saying he loves physically gifted players, right? He believes so much in his ability and his staff's ability to teach the skills and the set that they need to be successful at this level once they have them in the building. Okay. And so I like that too. So the Pegues pick, one quick thing I get it back to. Tonka Hemingway is an all-time names list. Okay. To be a defensive tackle and have the name Tonka, like a truck, and then Hemingway. I mean, it just adds such a great dynamic. I love that. Tommy Mallet, you talked about, obviously he'll be a wide receiver. Very interesting stuff on that coming out of Montana. And here's the one I want to talk about. Now, people will be like, Scott, you said, well, the Raiders need a franchise quarterback. And you're saying, okay, you're not going to go get a franchise quarterback in the 4th or 5th round or 6th round, because how often does that happen? But I will tell you, Mo, I am a fan of Cam Miller. I'm not saying Cam Miller is going to be the starting quarterback for the Raiders in 3 years. I'm not saying that. But if you see the comments from Tom Brady and what Tom Brady liked about him, and you see something that I want to touch upon with a lot of these guys, because a lot of the post-draft press conferences, you kind of have to read between the lines because you get a lot of questions and all that. A lot of these guys, if you look at the programs they came from, the backgrounds they come from, they're winners. Cam Miller, North Dakota State, obviously a massive program. For those of you who don't know, and I'm sure it's most of you, great program, playing for a national championship at that level every year. So here's a guy who comes out of a winning environment. His mechanics are phenomenal, Mo. And so I look at a developmental quarterback, and of course, I wanted Will Howard. I think the Steelers got the steal of the draft. I really do. But they had other needs to address, and I respect that. But to get a guy like Cam Miller, who's got such low risk associated with him taking him in the 6th round, i.e. where Tom Brady went, by the way, to me, this is the kind of guy where you can develop. And Geno Smith's got 3 years, right? 3 years. If he stays healthy and performs at the level they want him to, you got a guy who can just sit there and learn for 3 years. And then after 3 years, you see what you got. But I like Cam Miller. I think he's got a lot of upside there. Whether or not he can be a pro starting quarterback, we have no idea. But here's a risk late with a quarterback that I actually like.
Are we drawing the Tom Brady comparisons?
No.
6th round pick,
No, but I do like the culture fit here with a kid who comes out of a winning program, brings that mentality with him, and I think Tom Brady's going to be pretty involved with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the comments that Tom Brady made about Cam Miller. We'll be honest about this. Cam Miller is obviously not going to be involved in the offense much at all unless Geno Smith is hurt. But I also say don't forget about Aiden O'Connell. Mm-hmm. Aiden O'Connell, because the Raiders waited until late in the draft to get a quarterback, it's clear that they still see that they can potentially develop Aiden O'Connell unless they get a good trade offer that they can't refuse. But Aiden O'Connell is going to be QB2, and Cam Ward is going to be QB3, i.e. the emergency quarterback, for at least for now. He's the developmental guy as a late-round pick. But if the Raiders are looking at the quarterback of the future, we can pump the brakes on that for now, and potentially because they could add another quarterback next year. And I've always said this, unless you have your starter in place, and they do right now in Geno Smith, but if you're looking ahead to the future, you continuously take swings, because once Geno Smith is out of the picture, you want to have as many guys competing for that job as you can have of quality caliber. So we'll see what happens with Cam Miller's development, but it'll be interesting to see where he ends up in 2-3 years.
Yes, and your point about, I'm not saying take as many swings at quarterback as the Browns did.
Oh,
that's a whole different story, and we're not going to talk about Sanders today because I know you guys everybody's exhausted with talking about that. But yes, I think to your point, you got a kid there. You have Aiden O'Connell, who we've said all along on this show is a very good backup and spot starter in the NFL, and can be, I think, for a long time as long as he stays healthy. And so to your point, that's what I kept thinking in the draft is as the rounds went by and they weren't going quarterback especially after round 3, I thought to myself, well, they like Aiden O'Connell. And that's good as a backup to Geno Smith. And look, if Geno Smith goes out and has a terrible year and the signing, and I'm not saying he will, I don't think he will, but If he did, or something happens to him, God forbid, then you have Aiden O'Connell there, and you take different swings next year. But I agree with you. You keep chomping at that bit for a quarterback and see what happens as you move along. But then, Mo, I just final look at this class. They finally got a linebacker, their last pick, Cody Lindenberg. So we'll see how that goes, and I think they'll address some of that maybe in the open market as we gear up for the season moving along too. One last thing I want to get to. So that's the draft. You guys have heard exhaustive discussion on this. We have a lot of calls on it, so we're still going to talk about it in a minute in the second segment. But Josh Jacobs, a lot of people talking about this. Now, I think wasting too much time on the past is a waste of your time, right? Everybody knows Josh McDaniels was a piece of crap. Everybody knows that Ziegler and then Telesco to a certain degree after that just wasn't the answer. We all know that. I mean, you don't need stories from players, but I think hearing it from a player like Josh Jacobs is interesting. This is a story he told, and this is from Bussin' with the Boys, by the way, the podcast. All credit to them. But I want to play this segment and get your reaction to it, Mo. Here's a little thing about Josh Jacobs sharing a story about his fifth-year option and some weirdness that happened around him signing that deal.
How hard was it to leave the Raiders?
Bro, I never wanted to. Bro, I spent a lot of money on a house I built fully custom built, and never stayed in. Like, so you gotta know I was investing there.
Sorry, I had the wrong clip there.
How hard was it to leave?
So that's the longer clip. So my apologies, folks. But what Josh Jacobs had to talk about was, Mo, just to tell the story of an overview, was him. He was there. He did not want to play on the tag. They turned down the fifth-year option, and he was fine with that, he said. And so then he had to play on the tag. So he had an hour to sign it. He was in the car in the parking lot in Henderson there at the Raiders facility with Max Crosby. They both were going in to sign deals. And he waits, and somebody from the Raiders comes out and has what he called a reporter on the phone, like openly on the call, like listening in as this person was trying to get them to come in and sign their deal. And so Josh Jacobs' whole point of view on that was like, wait a minute, you have somebody on the phone and you're listening in. It was just a strange deal. But does any of that surprise you, Mo, with what we found out after the fact? Now, there were certain, and people are going to try to guess who the reporter was. There were certain folks that covered the Raiders who were very much until the last minute on the Josh McDaniels bandwagon, right? And you can look back into whoever that was. There was a few of them. And so you can make your own judgment on who might have been. It doesn't really matter. But does it surprise you at all that these kind of shenanigans were happening with a guy who leads through fear and intimidation?
Absolutely not. I mean, it just shows that Josh McDaniels did not learn from his first tenure in Denver. And it went sour pretty quickly. We on this show said, hey, give Josh McDaniels a chance, right? Everyone deserves, not everyone, but most people deserve a second chance when they make a mistake. There's time to correct it. He was a young coach when he was with Denver. But it's just very clear that the Josh McDaniels 2.0 experiment was an abject failure. And you saw that in the record. You saw that the Raiders went from a 10-7 team to a team that was in the pits and needed a culture change that Antonio Pierce did bring. And Antonio Pierce, was one and done too, but he brought a much needed culture change transition into what the Raiders have now with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly and company.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you brought up Coach Pierce, because as much as I was critical of him once I saw, in my view, that he couldn't really do the job, I don't think it was a waste of time. I think his tenure, albeit short, that reset was good. It was good for the players, because remember, a lot of us are like, well, you can't let players, and I was guilty of this, you can't let Max Crosby's dictating who the coach is, blah, blah, blah. And so, but for maybe at that point in time, it wasn't such a bad thing. You could say, well, it wasted a year. Okay, that's a fair argument. But I do think that at the end of the day, it really helped, and it showed the players that the owner and the organization were listening to them, and that's probably going to go a long ways for this. By the way, I do have the Josh Jacobs clip. I want to play this real quick, because everybody's probably sitting there saying, well, you're going to play it and you didn't play it. So here it is. I got the shorter one. Here we go.
Then what's crazy is when they were trying to get me to come sign, this is crazy. Before I came to sign, me and Max on the phone, Max trying to make it work. He was like, man, please just come. So we come up there and we got like an hour left before we got to sign the paper or, on a deal or not. And me and Max is in the car. Dude comes up to my car and he's talking to us, but he's moving his phone around. He's on the phone with an interviewer, literally on the phone with a reporter while he's talking to me, bro. So anytime that I know it's one reporter over there, that anytime he had anything to say and they'd be like, where are people getting this information from? I'm like, it's coming from them. So I was like, it was just a weird situation, bro. I'm telling you. And it has nothing to do with the Raiders organization. It's more so the people that they had in there at the time. And you know what made it worse? I seen it. I didn't say nothing. Max was like, bro, did you see who was on the phone with? I said, okay, so I'm not tripping. I was like, I thought, sometimes you be like, bro, I'm tripping. Like I might be tripping for real. Yeah, like I'm doing too much. But like when Max brought it up, I was like, okay, I know I ain't bugging. I'm like, yeah. But that's when I knew, like,
So there you go. Thanks to Bussin' for the boys for that. But yeah, so you hear him too talk about how, well, anytime you saw something from that same, he said interviewer, but reporter basically, you knew that it was coming from inside the organization. And as a player, the one thing you need with your people, I don't care if it's the PR people, it's the front office, it's the coaches, is to know that what you say and what you're doing is not going to get back to some reporter, right? And so see how the trust was just eroded in every possible way. Just craziness, but a learning lesson. And the Raiders have moved on from that, and they have adults in the room.
As I said, as critical as we both were of Antonio Pierce and his one and done year, he brought in a much needed change in that locker room. You saw the difference in the players' demeanor once he took over as the interim. Now, did it work long term? Absolutely not. But you can tell that, and I say this a lot too on multiple shows, there are some coaches in the league who are good coaches, but they're not head coaches. They're good as coordinators, position coaches, but they're not head coaching material. Antonio Pierce, in my opinion, good linebackers coach, not a good head coach. Josh McDaniels now back in New England as offensive coordinator. He can design plays. He's a good offensive play caller, not a good head coach.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, one last thing on this is just, and this goes back to my experience in business, and Murph and I talk about this all the time, which is leadership, right? And this is, I don't care if you're leading, you're the manager of a Starbucks or you're the foreman on a construction site. Your leadership skills, you have to instill in people confidence and the desire to want to work hard and do everything that they can for you as a leader and for themselves, understanding that you're in the journey together. And so poor leadership by Josh McDaniels. I mean, like you said, he can design plays and all that, but man, even if I'm on his offense, I'm not going to him to trust. I'm not going to trust him with anything, knowing these stories are coming out after the fact, even though it was him as a head coach. But man, somebody paranoid like that reminds me of like a Richard Nixon type paranoia, which is kind of crazy. But anyway, all right. We're going to step aside and we're getting right to your calls. We got a bunch of them, obviously, since the draft. We want to get to those as well. You're with Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black today. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. Welcome back. Segment number 2 of this edition of Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering your Las Vegas Raiders. Are you excited, Raider Nation, for the upcoming season? Training camp just around the corner, just a few months away. And then football is coming back. We are talking about the draft. We are getting to your phone calls now. I'm Scott Gulbransen, your host, along with my co-host, Moe Moton, and we welcome you back to the show. Mo, you think we got some callers who are pretty excited today?
Should be. Hysterically excited. Should be.
Yes. And Murph is not one of them because we're waiting for the annual Murph call about the Raiders winning the Super Bowl next year. So it'll come. I'm sure it will. My buddy Murph will bring it up. But anyway, we're going to get right into your phone calls. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Rate and review as well. Please do that for us. It helps us out significantly when you rate and review the show. If you watch us on YouTube or Rumble or X or Facebook, wherever you're watching us, thank you. Subscribe there as well, but don't let that stop you from subscribing to the audio side. If you subscribe to the audio side, that's just like you buying the show for us. It doesn't cost you anything. But for us, that subscription's a big deal. So we appreciate you doing that wherever you're at. And we're going to jump right into it. All right, our first call comes from the Beehive State. You know where the Beehive State is, Mo? I'm quizzing you on geography now.
Go ahead, shoot, Scott.
Utah. Ready? It is Armando from the Great Salt Lake. Here we go.
Hey, Scott and Mo. This is Armando from Salt Lake. I'm just taking a break. I know Mo will appreciate this. I'm taking a break from watching the Knicks give up a lead. I live now in Salt Lake, but as you guys know, I might have mentioned before, I've lived in New Jersey all my life, so I'm a Knicks fan. I have to take a break now after third quarter just wrapped up. Knicks are down 7. Brunson exited the locker room, so I wanted to focus. I wanted to shift my attention and focus on some positivity in my sports. The Raiders draft. This feels weird, guys. This feels like a normal draft. No surprises. I can't remember one. You know, I've watched the draft. My first one that I sat through and I watched, I'd say most of it was in 1998. Charles Woodson getting picked, and I was 10 years old at the time, so I didn't really know too much at that point, certainly less than I know now. But I was really excited for Charles Woodson. That was the player that I wanted. Turned out pretty okay, I'd say. And this is the first time since then that our first round pick, I cheered. You know, when I heard Goodell say Ash, I yelled. You know, I cheered, and it feels weird for all the picks afterwards to be sensible, and not only sensible, but ones that I had them mocked to. That you, Scott, you were on the Ashton Jeanty train from the beginning. You had the picks. Mo had in his final mock draft a few picks that actually turned out to be, the picks for the Raiders. Vic and Tashawn at the Athletic, a bunch of picks that they had mocked. What's going on, guys? This is normal and this is great. This feels awesome. I'm so excited for this year. My question to you guys, just as a jumping off point, what are positions that you feel you think can still be addressed via free agency? I think I'd like to see the team go through, the coaching staff go through mini camp and just get an assessment for what the team is looking. If I looked at the roster, I would say nickelback. That would be my answer. But I don't know, Thomas Harper. I'd be interested to see what he can do. Not to say that he is the savior, but something tells me that I'd like to see him get coached up by Pete Carroll and see what he can do, because he was an undrafted guy last year, and I don't know. I'd be intrigued. That would be my position, but I'd love to hear from you guys. It's been a while, so I figure I call in, and much love to you guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Armando from Jersey by way of Salt Lake City. Mo, I'll let you start first with his lack of belief in the Knicks, who I think after his call actually did pretty good.
Yeah, so the Knicks steal game 1 in Boston. So that was a welcome sight. By the time you're hearing this, game 2 have been played already. But it was I yelled. Speaking of yelling when you hear something, Armando yelled when he heard Ash from Roger Goodell. I yelled when the Knicks pulled out that game 1. But that's a totally different conversation for a different day between a New Yorker and a New Jersey native. But getting to the Raiders draft class and their roster, I agree with you, Armando. Nickelback is a position I look at that they can tinker with. Keep in mind the Raiders still have over $38 million in cap space, so if they need to, they can bring in guys. I've been pounding the table for Mike Hilton, former Pittsburgh Steeler, former Cincinnati Bengal. He is still, at 31 years old, one of the best slot cornerbacks in this league. So if the Raiders are looking for a slot cornerback, Mike Hilton is still out there. For right now, I do think Darnay Holmes is the front runner for that position. Darnay Holmes has played mostly slot cornerback in his career. He's also played 2 years in Patrick Graham's system with the New York Giants. I'm familiar with it because I've watched the Giants out here in New York. So Darnay Holmes knows the system. In my opinion, he is the front runner for that spot. But a lot of Raider fans have brought up Thomas Harper. I believe Vinny Bonsignore of the Las Vegas Review-Journal has also said that Thomas Harper could get reps in the slot position. So we'll see. I'm sure the Raiders are going to have a rotation of players in that spot in this offseason program. The other position, really quick, Scott, linebacker.
Yes, I was going to ask you.
Wasn't too, I don't want to say wasn't too thrilled, but you have Landon Roberts, you have Devin White. Both guys, in my opinion, are downhill linebackers. Devin White can give you something in the pass rush as well. They still need a linebacker who's pretty good in coverage. And Cody Lindenberg, Has a missed tackle rate of 17.2%. That worries me. Now, he's a 7th-round pick, so he's probably a long shot to get a big role, but I still think they can do something at the linebacker position. Speaking of New Jersey, Kaiser White is from Plainfield, New Jersey, and he is available on the free agent market. If the Raiders need a linebacker, Kaiser White is still available to be picked up.
Thank you for saying that. By the way, you mentioned Vinny. I want to give a shout out to Vinny. He just celebrated his 21-year wedding anniversary with his lovely wife, Lynn. So Vinny and Lynn, congratulations to you guys on that huge number there. 21. Great photo he shared up on X. So got out there. But yeah, linebacker to me, and you said $30 million. Remember, everybody was worried about their cap space a few weeks ago? Hey, $30 million, and there still could be other restructures going. You don't know what's going on. But I think linebacker, and you mentioned all of the defensive backs too, which is a big one. All right, we're going to move on now to, we're staying out west. We're going from Utah, just up the way a little bit, to our buddy Anthony in Idaho. We haven't heard from Anthony, but here he is.
Scott, Mo, what's going on? This is Anthony from Idaho calling back again. It's been a while. So the draft, I think that we did pretty damn good, actually. First of all, not overthinking that first pick and just going with the best player available, who happens to play the position that we needed the most. Running back was our weakest position on the roster. This guy, it was a playmaker. Since needs playmakers, and we got one at Jeanty. And then the second round, we started to trade back. So I said, okay, cool, that's kind of what I wanted. And then they traded back again, and I was like, okay, what the hell is going on? Acquired 2 extra picks. I was able to still add a dog, Jack Besh. I think that dude, I think he's a great fit for our offense. I was looking for something a little speedier at receiver, but that's all right, man. He catches everything that comes his way, and he just gets open even when he's not open. So it's another big body for Gino to throw to, and then going to lineman, middle of the draft, that was solid. Dante Thornton, that dude is that dude could fly, and I actually love that pick. And then even the last day, just adding some more talent on offense, another receiver / quarterback, another quarterback, linebacker. I wish we had attacked linebacker a little early in the draft. As it stands right now, I look at the roster now to still say that we didn't do enough at linebacker. I do like that dude for Minnesota. We got the 7th round, but I can't expect the 7th round pick to start right away. Looking a little bleak. I hope we do go after a veteran, maybe someone like a C.J. Mosley. I think that'd be a great fit for our defense, as long as he's healthy. Actually, the only other concern I have about the roster is slot corner. I do not know who on the roster would be a full-time starter at the slot as of right now. We have a bunch of battery corners. I don't know. Pretty impressed overall. You can't get every need. Can't fill every need that you have, but I'm just really glad that this regime seems to be taking this rebuild very seriously, and looks like they're doing a good job so far. Thanks for listening. Raiders.
There we go. There's Anthony in the land of potatoes, Idaho. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. Also, the state that gave you Ashton Jeanty, at least from a college perspective. Mo, we answered a lot of his questions with the previous call as far as the cornerback position, especially the nickel, and then the slot, and then also talking about linebacker. He did bring up a couple of the draft picks, and there's a question I want to ask you, because the Raiders did take a couple. They took an offensive guard and offensive tackle, but what does the draft tell you? Because I've said for the last several months that for some reason, Raider Nation has a much more negative view of the offensive line than evaluators I've seen talk about the offensive line. And now the way the draft fell, and to your point about these aren't necessarily guys that are going to come in and start right away, that tells you that they like and they believe the offensive line they have is workable. What are your thoughts on that?
So I listened to Pete Carroll and John Spytek talk after day 2, and I listened very closely to what they said about the 2 offensive linemen they drafted, Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant. Caleb Rogers out of Texas Tech, Charles Grant out of William and Mary. What this tells me is they have faith that DJ Glaze can be a starting right tackle because Pete Carroll specifically said that Caleb Rogers was going to play on the inside spots.
Yep.
Guard, it will probably be his short-term outlook for now. Now, Caleb Rogers, most of his starts, 35 starts, came at right tackle. But because he has a shorter arm length, they're going to transition him inside. Now, that doesn't mean that he's definitely going to be a guard. I'm sure he's going to get reps in both spots because he has the experience at right tackle, and I'm sure they're going to, as Pete Carroll said, give him his reps at the guard position. But it tells me that they have a lot of faith in DJ Glaze if Caleb Rogers is going to be a guard. Charles Grant coming out of William & Mary, remember, he's coming from an FCS program. Doesn't mean he can't play in the NFL. Doesn't mean he can't be a starter. But you got to give him some time with that jump going from FCS competition to NFL competition week in and week out. Now, he played mostly left tackle, but I think Charles Grant can be a swing tackle. But I don't think he's going to necessarily push DJ Glaze for that starting spot. But it tells you that DJ Glaze is your front runner for right tackle. I believe Colton Miller is not. I don't think he's going to get traded. There's a lot of buzz. Is Colton Miller going to get traded? Not going to happen. They're not going to create a hole there at left tackle. And then the guard spots are pretty much wide open. I just mentioned Caleb Rogers. They signed out Alex Kappa. They kept Jordan Meredith. Dylan Parham is still there. Jackson Powers Johnson, they said, could be the starting guard or not center. I think Jackson Powers Johnson is the starting center, but he's going to get reps at guard as well. That is outside of cornerback. The guard position that's going to be the biggest competition at training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, this is why there's so many of you want to just dump on the offensive line. And this, again, tells me that they believe, as you said, DJ Glaze, and they believe that they had bigger issues, right? Running back, wide receiver. Clearly, they went that direction first. So that tells you where they're at. Whether they're right or wrong, we'll see. But I think you watching the film, and I was talking to an associate at Odyssey who does another podcast and is a former offensive lineman, and he told me part of the Raiders' problem last year was all scheme generated, not the right guys in the right scheme, and that created issues too for that offensive line. So I think you'll see different. I think Chip Kelly looked at this line and said, this is workable, and let's try to improve it and develop guys, set up some competition, but it'll be interesting to see how that rolls forward. All right, let's get on the call. We got a bunch of calls. And our good friend, we go out to the Show Me State now. We go to St. Louis in the Missouri for our buddy Dominique. Here's Dominique.
Hey, Scott and Mo. This is Dominique from the Show Me State. Nice to hear from you guys again. Just want to touch on the draft. Overall, I love this draft. I haven't felt this good about a draft in a long time. I would give it a solid B+. There's only two things that I would have done different and that I would have preferred. The first thing was I wanted us to double up at running back. So in the 7th round, instead of taking the linebacker, I would have chosen Miami's running back, Damian Martinez. He literally went the pick right after us. And then also, I would have doubled down at quarterback as well. Love the Cam Miller pick. I still would have took him in the 6th round. But also, I would have took Sanders, Milroe, or Howard day 3, especially Sanders. I mean, once you get to day 3 and he's still available, I just think that's a steal. Even if it doesn't work out, if you only spent a day 3 pick on, you're not paying him much. Other than those two things, I love the draft. And Tommy Mellott, Montana State's quarterback, he'll play receiver for us. Hopefully he can develop and turn into Julian Edelman 2.0. That kid is freaky athletic. I absolutely love Spytek thinking outside of the box and drafting a kid like him and also Cam Miller from those FCS schools. Another great pick of mine that I was a huge fan of, Darian Porter, the 6'3" cornerback from Iowa State. He ran I believe a 4.30. Just typical Pete Carroll, size, length type cornerback. I really, really like those. Of course, Jeanty, of course, we all like that. Jack Besh, I think he's going to be awesome. Just kind of a do-it-all, just tough-nosed kid that, man, how can you not root for that kid with everything he's dealt with? But let me know what you guys think. Like I said, my only issues were I would have chosen another running back, And then I also would have loved to draft either Shador Sanders, Milroe, or Will Howard. Apparently, Chip Kelly didn't want him, so that makes me feel a little better because if Chip Kelly spent the whole year with him and didn't want him, vouch for him, that makes me feel a little easier. But definitely would have done those things. But overall, love the draft. Let me know what you guys think. Bye-bye.
All right, Dominique with another stellar call. And his point about the running back. Now, just to make certain people know, the Raiders did undrafted free agents. They did sign or bring in 2 running backs. Nothing to really write home about. Old Dominion fullback Pat Conroy, and also Lamar running back Kalen Griffin. He received a rookie minicamp invite, which obviously was just happening. So that was a surprise, Mo, because you had predicted maybe they would go 2 running backs as well. I'm not surprised by the Will Howard thing. I don't think it's because Chip Kelly didn't believe in him. I think he was going to go too high, and they just didn't. They had other needs first. The offensive coordinator doesn't get precedent over everybody with the quarterback thing. So I think that the Geno Smith trade changed a lot of that. But the running back position, Mo, I by no means think they are done at all. I think they will bring in another veteran somehow or find another player to bring in. Ashton Jeanty is obviously clearly the man, but they do need to strengthen that room still.
I know people are going to flame me for this, but I would bring in J.K. Dobbins as an RB2.
Yeah.
I know J.K. Dobbins has an injury history, but if he's your RB2 and he's only getting 10 to 12 carries on average, not even, maybe 10 carries per week, I think he could stay healthy for a full season, because when he's gotten hurt is because he's been the lead running back. Ashton Jeanty is going to be your workhorse. Yep. Mostert just doesn't move the needle for me at this stage in his career. He's 33 years old. But I was thinking that the Raiders would double up at running back. They decided to go the undrafted rookie route. But I will bring up Mela out of Montana State, because a lot of people are comparing him to Julian Edelman. We get it because of the quarterback to wide receiver transition. Now, they said Mela will also play on special teams, and I could see him being a returner. I can see Mela being a Taysom Hill type player. I know, again, a lot of people are drawing the Julian Edelman comparison, and I understand it. But when you think about his athleticism, get him in open space, get him in the backfield, I think he could be a Taysom Hill type player where he has the quarterback experience. You can have him under center, and you don't know if he's going to throw it, if he's going to run it. Maybe if he makes that successful transition, then you can split him out wide. That is exactly what Taysom Hill has been with the New Orleans Saints. I think he can have a Taysom Hill type upside.
Yeah, for sure. And it just allows you to use him in so many different ways, which is, Swiss Army knife type thing. By the way, free agent running back still on the market. You have Jamal Williams. He's 30. You have Gus Edwards, right? Nick Chubb, which is technically free agent. Looks like the Browns are going to bring him back. He's coming off that big injury, though, clearly. You mentioned J.K. Dobbins. Past that, Cam Akers, another name that's out there. Nothing spectacular. But so I agree with you on Dobbins. I think that would be a good call. All right, we're getting on to our next call. It is Darkman. Darkman, bring it to us.
Hey, this is Darkman in the 305, baby. Hey, listen, I love this pick. I love Jeanty. I'm ecstatic about the pick, man. Anybody that said that we needed a getting offensive lineman, they're absolutely wrong. We got Jackson Powers Johnson manning up the middle. We got Colton Miller. We got DJ Glaze. I mean, we have a line, but we just needed a better scheme. And now we got Jeanty. I think with Chip Kelly running the offense, this is going to be great, man. Jeanty, Bowers, Jeanty, let's go. Yeah, hey, big ups, man. I hope we address the quarterback position and also the cornerback position in day 2 and day 3. Love the show, man. Later.
All right, Miami-Dade checking in with Darkman. Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Good call there. All right, moving on to Jack in Long Beach. Here's Jack.
Hey, Scott and Mo, this is Tack.
Oh, Tack.
In Long Beach.
There you go. See?
That's Tack with a T. T is in touchdown. Love your show, guys. Wanted to chime in post-draft. Thought we had a great draft, all things considered. I love trading down and getting extra picks. Jalen Ramsey is still out there, guys. We still have the cap space. He's still a cornerback. That seems like a good deal for us, especially now if we trade some draft capital it'll be 2026 draft capital, so it won't affect us in the short term. I think that's a deal we should make. I have a couple other random thoughts. All this narrative that Tom Brady is now running the show. Okay, I didn't see Tom Brady in the Raiders' war room at all. Every time they showed the war room during the draft, was looking for him. I paused it. I analyzed it like the Zapruder film. I did not see Tom Brady in there at all. He hasn't been at a single press conference of hiring the GM or the coach. Is Tom Brady really running the show, or is he just a silent partner? Anyway, that's my thoughts on Tom Brady. And then last thing, I heard that Christian Wilkins is wearing a walking boot still. Have you guys heard that? Is that true? Can you confirm that? Somebody said they saw it or heard it on Max Crosby's podcast. If that's the case, I am very worried. All right. Thanks, guys. Love the show. Bye.
All right. Thanks for the call, man. We appreciate it. TAC, T-A-C-K, or T-A-C, whichever you spell it, for the call. The Tom Brady thing, let me start with that, Mo, real quick and get your reaction. Tom Brady is not a scout. He's not an X's and O's guy. He's not a GM. He, to me, is the cherry on top. He's the guy who got Spytek, and I believe Pete Carroll, to Las Vegas, right? He is the connector. He's the behind the scenes guy. No, he wasn't in the draft room. I didn't think he would be in the draft room. He sounds like he had influence later in the draft with the Cam Miller pick, at least he gave good feedback on it, which reassured the Raider brass that it was a good pick that late in the draft. So to me, that's the key. I think Tom Brady is significant for the organization, but not necessarily on a daily player personnel, because that's not what he does.
The other thing is that he cannot be but so close to roster personnel operations and decisions because he has a job being a Fox broadcast analyst.
Correct.
So it would be a breach of his contract to do that.
Right.
So he can't be front and center anyway. He can't be at these press conferences and in these public relations. He has to be hands off. But a report did come out that he was in communication with the team. He wasn't obviously making the picks, but he was in communication and what the team was doing and what their plan was. I will say about the Christian Wilkins concern, this has come up now, not only from Tony Polino of Sports Key, and a lot of people have attacked him for his record and reporting, but Vic Tafur also brought this up, that the Raiders, that Christian Wilkins' foot has healed a little slower, has taken a little longer to heal than the Raiders expected. Now, Vic Tafur also said that they expect Christian Wilkins to be ready for training camp, but the healing process is taking a little longer. Keep in mind, the Raiders did draft Tonka Hemingway in the 4th round, who could play defensive tackle on the interior, and they drafted JJ Pegues, who could play on the interior as well. It doesn't mean they're concerned necessarily with Christian Wilkins, but it's good to have that depth just in case Wilkins has a setback, which could happen with surgery off of a Jones fracture. So I wouldn't ring the alarm bells yet. Let's wait till training camp and see if he's ready to hit the practice field.
And the team has denied there's any issues there, that he's had any setbacks. So that's their official position now. That's not me. That's just what they've said. And I've heard representatives for the Raiders say that too. All right, let's move on. Mo and I have been missing something in our life the last few weeks, and it's been Jacob from Fresno. So here's Jacob.
Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guys? So, big story of the draft, obviously, is the New York Football Giants took Carroll Scrabble. The 1944 World Football Champions, they say, the fastest man in the world. He runs a 5'2" 40. Yeah, he's a giant. So, my dreams were shattered, but, you know, not a bad consolation prize. We get Ashton Jeanty, the next Barry Sanders, they're calling him, the next Emmitt Smith, really, they're calling him. The guy is incredible. I can't believe he fell to us. I mean, I can believe it. Everybody knows. They weren't looking for a running back. But still, it's really, I think we struck gold 2 years in a row. We got the best player in the draft last year. We get the best player in the draft this year. I know positional value means a lot, but in terms of talent, you can't, who's better than Ashton Jeanty? Who's coming into the league this year with more physical, athletic ability and capability than a guy like Ashton Jeanty? And Brock Bowers last year. You take them. I love them. I love Brock Bowers. I love Ashton Jeanty. The Raiders. So excited. We're getting our blue chip players. We're making adult decisions. And Jack Besh, I believe I'm saying it right. Jack Besh, the guy is just a great feel-good story. He's a tight end with wide receiver speed. It's incredible. If you look at him, he just muscles everybody out. He's going to be great in the run game. Incredible. Nobody's really thinking about that when you're thinking of a wide receiver, but the guy is going to put safeties on the rear end, and the guy is going to go out there and work, and he's going to be a gritty wide receiver. And I love it. We got Darian Porter. Who else? We got Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, Dante Thornton Jr., 6'5" receiver who runs a 4.3. Not a 6'3" who runs a 4.5. We got all the numbers in my life. We got the future, guys. The future looks bright for the Raider Nation. Everything is all as it should be. And who knows, maybe Cam Miller develops into something great one day. Probably not. He's a 6th-round quarterback. Okay. I'm hyped. Can I be hyped? Can I be excited for the season? I'm finally excited for the season. Appreciate you guys. You take it easy. And I'll go Raiders.
All right, there's Jacob in Fresno, and he brought up a lot of good stuff about Ashton Jeanty, but also he talked about the physical prowess of this draft class. I mean, if you talk about what he said there towards the end as well. Mo, what do we know the history of Pete Carroll and roster construction along with Kelly around the type of player? Is this exactly the mold that you would expect from a Pete Carroll team?
Yes, an athletic team, a lot of length on the defensive side of the ball, versatility. That's one thing that I think hasn't been talked about enough. Pete Carroll is defensive lineman, not necessarily your prototypical, 310, 320-pound defensive tackles at DT. You look at Tonka Hemingway and JJ Pegues, they're not just, stout run stuffers. Both these guys are athletes. Tonka Hemingway actually played more edge rusher at South Carolina, even though he was about 284. And we talked about JJ Pegues playing both sides of the ball, 7 rushing touchdowns at Ole Miss last year. Can you imagine a 300-pounder coming at you from 5 yards out from the goal line? As a 250-pound, linebacker, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
So again, I say this. I use the P word again. Project players. And I don't mean that in a demeaning or a negative way. I mean that in the sense that the upside, and if you have a creative coaching staff, the number of things that the Raiders can do with guys like Dante Thornton and JJ Pegues and Tonka Hemingway, even Ashton Jeanty and Jack Besh at the top of the class, there are endless possibilities. But before I end my spiel, quick game we'll play here. Dante Thornton, 6'5", runs a 4.3. In what round would the late Al Davis have drafted him? I know everyone's saying he was the Al Davis pick, and I said it during the draft.
With the 6th pick in the NFL draft in the first round?
What round? You got to know that Al Davis, if he was still here, would have been salivating over that.
Oh, yes. There's no question. And it's so funny because it's true. I mean, it's absolute truth. So good. All right. We got to get out of here in a second. We're going to get one more call in. Okay. And if your call didn't make it on, because there's a bunch of you, and I apologize for that, call right back. Maybe we'll be able to get to a call show, an all-call show later in the week. But if not, we'll get to you next time. I promise. I got a list of people, including Misha, Tarek, Yandog, and what else? Who else do I have? Yeah, and those guys. So call back in. I will put your calls at the top of the list. Here is Raider Rube.
Hey guys, Raider Rube from Fargo, North Dakota.
North.
The home of the quarterback factory known as the NDSU Bison. You got Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, Easton Stick, and now Cam Miller. The future of the Raiders quarterback room. No, I'm kidding. He's
North.
At best a backup in a couple of years. I just think that it's crazy that the NDSU Bison had 4 quarterbacks in the NFL. 2 of them first-round picks. If you had asked me 15 years ago, did NDSU ever have a quarterback in the NFL, I'd think you're chewing too much ayahuasca. No. So, anyway, Cam Miller, cool. I love the draft. Spytek, I thought, did a great job. We both got what we wanted, Scott. You got your Ashton Jeanty, and I got my trade backs. I do think Spytek does like to trade back. I think he's proven that in his interviews since. The two things that gave me question about the draft. We didn't get a John Jenkins replacement. No nose tackle, no run stuffer. A little concerned how we're going to stop the run. Might be a great pass rush, but I don't know how we stop the run. And then a running back. Yeah, I said running back. Yeah, Ashton Jeanty, fantastic, top 10 running back. But we're going to run this ball 40-plus times a game, right? Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly to run. Do we really want Ashton Jeanty to carry the ball 30-plus times? I don't want to ruin our new toy in the first year. I want him fresh and healthy, especially if we're going to make any kind of push at the end of the season for that 7th seed. So I kind of want to have a running back, too. I thought we'd get one, RB2, but maybe it's going to be Nick Chubb. I don't know. But that's where my concern is. Raheem Mostert, he's 33. That's like 75 in running back years. And maybe that's why Pete Carroll likes him so much. I don't know. Just wonder of your thoughts. I haven't heard anyone talk about the fact that we don't have a good number 2 running back. If Ashton twists an ankle, God forbid, what do we do in our running back room? That's my concern. Have a great day, guys. Bye.
All right, Raider Rube from North Dakota. By the way, Raider Rube, I talked about Cam Miller earlier in the show. I want to see if you were paying attention because I dropped a little Easter egg in there for you. See if you got it. Anyway, yeah, and listen, again, I go back to the North Dakota thing and the Bison up there and what they've been able to do. The reason those guys have made it into the NFL, at least for a cup of coffee for some of them, yeah, Trey Lance didn't make it so far. And others, you look at Carson Wentz, who had kind of a flash in the pan type situation, is they're just winning programs. I think guys are good athletes. They come out of that, so they get a shot. But clearly, yeah, Cam Miller, a project quarterback there. But Mo, I'll let you react as well to what Raider Rube had to say.
Yeah, I said early in the show that I'm just not comfortable with Raheem Mostert being RB2. Not to be an ageist here, but he also has an injury history going back to his time in San Francisco. So not only what if Ashton Jeanty gets nicked up, what if Raheem Mostert gets nicked up? You know, are you trusting Dylan Laube, who had a fumble in the preseason and a fumble in the regular season? Dylan Laube can't hang on to the football. So, and they didn't re-sign Amir Abdullah yet. Sincere McCormick has only played 5 games in his career. I still throw out the name J.K. Dobbins as an RB2. I think we saw what J.K. Dobbins can do when he's mostly healthy with the Chargers last year. Had a pretty good year. If he's your RB2, not getting a ton of carries, not taking a ton of hits, I think he could play a full season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, thank you guys. And if we didn't get to your calls, Tarek Yandog, call back in right away, and I will make sure your calls are at the top of the list next show. There were some calls before the draft that I didn't include, obviously, because they were dated because we didn't have a show last week. So if you called in at all, please call right back in or text and we'll get it out to you. Mo, let everybody know what you got coming up with your Bleacher Report Lives as we head out the door.
Bleacher Report Lives next week is going to be a big week. There's a schedule release. I'll drop my early win-loss predictions for the Raiders. Look out for that. I know a lot of people are going to have their responses to that. Usually it gets a lot of traction. Haven't really decided where I'm landing with the Raiders win-loss predictions, but that is the big stream over at Bleacher Report next week on Wednesday as the schedule gets released on Wednesday, May 14th.
Yes, it's coming. The schedule next week. We'll get reaction to that. You'll start making all your travel plans, all that jazz. Should be fun as well. Make sure you check out Mo's work up on Bleacher Report around the NFL. And also on sportsnot.com too. You'll get it there as well. All right, Mo, my friend, take care of yourself, and we will see you next week.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right, for our producer, Mike Robier, I'm Scott Gulbransen. He is Moe Moton. This has been Silver and Black Day. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening or watching and rate and review. We appreciate that very much. Until next time, Raider Nation, take care of yourselves and have a great week.